Well, hello again. This is Mike from the Dick and Mike Show, and Dick is here,
I'm Dick.
and that's Dick over there. And tonight, a couple shows ago, we talked about Dick's lawsuit he had against the breweries, a couple of breweries in the area, and we're going to revisit that tonight. And Dick's got some additional information and some unique perspectives on the brewery's lack of responsibility in selling and dealing with their product. So I'm going to sort of be a bump on a log here for a while today, but Dick,
That's
if you want
fine.
to go ahead and take over, we'll be
Well,
fine.
I appreciate it, Mike. I got a little fired up in the last couple of days because when we did the three-part series a while ago, what I did was kind of walk through the lawsuit, and there were some interesting parts of that and what the judge said, and it was a nice story. But there's a core issue here that really came back to me in light of some popular topics in the news lately, namely this gun issue. And of course, what is continually painted in this is that there's this huge conglomerate of a corporate cartel, the gun industry and the NRA, who are purposely misrepresenting their products and getting them out there, knowing everybody's dying, and they don't care. And I thought, for what I was involved in years ago, coming around to the name of this show that we put up there, The Last Great Medicine Show, and I thought, wait a minute, if you want to describe a group of industries, a cartel, if you will, who are misleading the public and profiting from it, let's look at the liquor industry. Now, before we came in, I looked up some statistics, and I'm sure everyone has been inundated with stats about firearm deaths, and they're already being disputed. Even the Center for Disease Control has disputed some of the statistics that were put out for political purposes. But let me just go over a few things with you here that are universally accepted about the presence of the drinking habit in our country, all right? There are 2,200 alcohol poisonings every year. This is binge drinking. This is the kid that goes to a frat party or a high school kid that sneaks into the neighbor's party, overconsumes alcohol, and dies. There are 88,000 deaths annually attributed to the excessive use of alcohol. Okay, that's one death every 51 minutes. About 100,000 people each year die from alcohol-related incidents, and that includes fires, falls, crashes. I remember a very beautiful girl that I was sort of interested in at Ferris, who I found out passed away one weekend because she had too much to drink at a local pub and fell asleep in her apartment with a cigarette in her hand. It was a tragic thing. 696,000 students are assaulted each year by someone who is under the influence of alcohol. Every day, 7,000 children under the age of 16 take their first drink. The costs of all this, those are human terms. The dollars and cents cost, best estimate from 2015, it's $223.5 billion annually. Now, this is $1.90 per drink, the way it comes out statistically from sales. Now, how can it be $1.90 per drink? Well, there's 43 cents of profit in a beer and maybe $1.10 in an alcoholic beverage or a mixed drink or something. Uh-huh. The $1.90, ironically, isn't paid by the liquor industry because that would take all their profit. It's paid by us. It's paid in law enforcement, it's paid in rehab, it's paid in death and destruction, it's paid in suicides, it's paid in health claims, okay? 4,700 teens die, now teens are 18 and under, die every year from alcohol-related incidents. 36% of the people who are either in jail or under the supervision of the correctional custody establishment in this country, 36% of them were intoxicated with alcohol at the time of their crime. Now, why I call this the Last Great Medicine Show? Figure those statistics, okay? I take you back to a day in the Old West when the covered wagon would roll into town, and the guy would stand up on the side of the stage with a beautiful girl, and they'd hold up the brown bottle and promise you the moon.
Right.
Then what they did was they got out of town before the bodies started piling up. Well, the reason this alcoholic industry I call the last great medicine show is because they have paid for the right not to have to leave town. Now think about this, and this isn't my opinion. I'm not a prohibitionist. I'm not a moralist. I look at this, and we've lost sight of the fact that this is an industry like automobiles, like bakeries, like clothing, who has been given permission to put their product in the marketplace, yet they've got some problems. Their product impairs motor skills. Their product can be addictive. Their product, as we've just noted, can be fatal if overconsumed in one sitting. Their product can change behavior. And it goes on. And these are textbook properties of beverage alcohol. They're not my philosophy. So bringing that product to the marketplace in this country, we assume that there are certain obligations that are put on the manufacturer of the product or the provider of the service. Well, there are. State and federal laws are very clear, and consumer protection law is very clear, that when you have a product that's inherently dangerous, can't be made safe, like gasoline chainsaws, there are certain ways that you bring this to the marketplace. You have to, one, disclose everything that could go wrong. And the standards for the obligation to disclose are also in precedent cases. There's one that says if even 1 in a million people can be killed by it, that's an obligation on the provider of the service or the product based on their superior knowledge of their product. Well, the industry knows all this. They've been making these things for years. They read the newspapers, if nothing else. They certainly know the properties of their product. They know the alcohol content, everything else. So you'd think when they come to the marketplace, like everybody else, they've got to say, hey, here's our product, and you can buy it here, and it looks good in this glass, but we'd expect something on the screen. You know, don't try this at home, train driver on a closed course, that type of thing. You'd expect something on the screen that says, and my favorite is this Chantix commercial. That is a long diatribe of advisories. Yep. You'd think, caution, impacts motor skills, may change behavior, can be addictive, can be fatal if overconsumed. That's the law. Every product in the marketplace, that's the law, except one. Now, how does the liquor industry get away with this? Nobody knows. Even the courts and the lawyers that I've talked to, they curl their eyebrows and cock their heads and go, wow, that's odd. There is no legal precedent for a product like this in the marketplace not to fulfill their obligations in bringing it to the marketplace. You may be surprised to know that as a result of my lawsuit years ago, I did rattle a lot of change in the industry because I wasn't suing for damages. I wasn't claiming I was harmed. You people, hurt me, and I've lost friends, and I'm unpopular, which I did on my own anyway. But it's called a tort case. I'm claiming damages, and if I get into court, I'm going to prove them. What I was alleging was a violation of the Michigan Commercial Code, the Advertising Act, which, Mike, is very clear on this subject. It says if you have an inherently dangerous product, it says what you must do, what your obligations are. It goes on to say that omission of material facts is also a violation. So it's very specific. It also says if I tend to dismiss, demean, or minimize a risk or a hazard, that's a violation. Now, consumer protection laws exist for two obvious reasons. One is to protect consumers. Right. The second thing is to deny the provider of the service or the product the profits ill-gotten by that misrepresentation. You can't do that. You can't profit from it. So here you've got a product that's inherently dangerous. The statistics are everywhere. So it's the social experiment's over. We know that it's costing us. Go to second base. Okay, if we know this, what restrictions are we going to put on this product? Well, they're already there. They're in law. What may surprise you to know, as I said in my lawsuit, I rattled the chains so hard on this industry. In fact, one of the attorneys told me that they had been sued a lot for torts, people claiming injury and harm. Interestingly enough, the alcoholic beverage industry has never paid one dime in damages to anybody in the United States. They've escaped it every time. They live on something called the assumption of risk. But they were so concerned, as one attorney told me, he said he'd never seen a lawsuit like this. And I'm remembering Aesop's fables and the false flattery, and I said, no, I don't believe that. I said, nice. He says, no. We're sued all the time by people that claim contributory negligence in a situation where someone was harmed. But we've never been called on the face of our advertising. Well, in the next few months, through various phone calls, and people called me and sort of tipped me off, you need to know what's going on in Washington. The liquor lobby raced to Washington, and they lobbied for a law that is now in place. It's called the Beverage Labeling Act. It says merely a couple things that are required to be on the container for beer and wine. But the law also states that no other political entity, no state, can require any other warnings. No one can hold them to a higher standard. So here you've got a law that actually allows an industry an escape from telling you and me that this product can cause you a lot of trouble. It can hurt you. It can kill you. It's unprecedented. So when I call this the last great medicine show, the idea is that here's a product that people have told me whose only utility value is as a source of income for the people that sell it, because it won't wash your hair, it won't shine your car, it won't. When you couple with that all the negative parts of it, you almost have to misrepresent it or you couldn't sell it. You certainly can't tell all these things, okay? So where does that bring us as far as why I was sort of revved up again with all the news about gun violence? And well, you're getting into conversations about who's liable and we'll sue and we'll hold manufacturers accountable and that type of thing. And I'm sitting here thinking, wait, I have never seen a reckless, misrepresentative gun commercial. The NRA, who seems to be everybody's enemy, suggests, requires, encourages gun safety classes. They have never been reckless in their approach to the possession or use of firearms. Here we have a beverage industry that's killing us, maiming us. And yet no one's saying, wait a minute. If you've got state and federal governments colluding to misrepresent the dangers inherent in a product, that's a conspiracy to defraud. I am amazed that no attorney, no Jeffrey Feiger, look at what they did with cigarettes,
Yep.
who, by the way, had warnings on them since 1964. No one's come up and said, time out here. We have a huge body of people that have been harmed by this. We have prima facie evidence that there's been a conspiracy to defraud them. I'm just amazed that no one has taken this to court, either as a class action or individual case. And yet we're going after guns, we go after cigarettes. We live in a country, Mike, as you know, that ladder manufacturers have been successfully sued in tort cases.
Yep.
Because somebody made a case with the height of the ladder, it should have been this wide, the wood should have been thicker, whatever. Here's an industry that, a product that you have the most intimate relationship with. You can't get more intimate than consuming something. It's going in me. It's not going to be resting on my skin like a shirt. It's not going to be under me like a chair. It's not going to be around me like my car. I'm going to put this in my body. Everybody knows the properties of this. Everybody knows the hazards. Generally, people agree that about 10 to 14% of the population will have real trouble with this through no maturity or social adjustment problem of their own, but just their biophysics. And yet, we have a law that says these people are free from responsibility. It's amazing. I don't know if you can compare it. Can you think of anything else?
No, and I'm sitting here, my mind's just going
Sure.
because of this conversation. And as you know, and most of the public knows, I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic. And I spent many, many years destroying my life and other people's until I got woke up by the judge one day. But I'm sitting here, you're talking about implied consent and consent of drinking. Well, I'm an adult. I know from my own personal history what alcohol can do to me, and I choose not to drink it anymore. But if I choose to drink it, it's my choice. So how can I hold the alcohol industry responsible for knowing what it can happen to me and choosing to do it? That's fine as an adult to a certain extent.
Right.
But my thoughts are, because you obviously get me thinking, we've talked about this already, You know, I stopped drinking years and years and years ago, and I didn't think much about it, just stopped.
You don't drink water or anything anymore?
Well, I drink water.
I'm playing with you.
I know.
See, that's part of the psychology. We even think of drinking.
Yeah.
What do we think of?
Automatically alcohol.
Bingo.
Yep, I agree. So,
It's a very successful advertising campaign, let me tell you that.
I can tell.
Yeah.
But when I stopped drinking alcohol, it was just for my own benefit, for my own health, and to renew some relationships that I'd destroyed and that kind of stuff. And I also didn't want to go to jail again. But I never thought past that.
Right.
And now that since I've known you for many, many years, but this conversation's come up, I've started to think a lot more about, because I do some substance abuse counseling, on how to approach this on another level, which really needs to happen. The other thing that I'm thinking about, and we talked about, is implied consent or consent of, because I'm also a barber, and when I shave somebody, I tell them, the risk is that I might nick you,
Right.
or if you got a pimple
Right.
sticking up, I might knock
You're
it.
talking about assumption of risk.
Yeah, assumption of risk.
Right.
And but sometimes they call it implied consent.
Right.
If I nick you, you can't sue me.
Right.
Because you're going to have a risk involved.
Even in court, Mike, interrupt, but even in court, those things are acknowledged.
Yeah.
When we talked before, I talked about pouring Pepsi on your white Levi's and the caramel coloring would stain them. You're talking about what even the court recognizes
Yeah.
as life's little hazards.
Yeah.
Things are going to happen.
But where I'm taking this is minors, young people.
Right.
If they had the maturity to know what they were doing, they probably wouldn't be drinking anyway, because 25 years down the road, they're either going to be in jail or somebody's going to get hurt because of the drinking.
Right.
In most cases.
Right.
Why can't parents, on behalf of the children, on the behalf of minors, do a class action suit against the breweries?
I don't know why. I really don't. And it begs the question, and that's why I got so revved up. I'm sitting
Yeah.
here thinking, what you're talking about in assumed risk, this is all codified or codified, as lawyers say.
Right.
The doctrine of assumption of risk, and I studied it greatly when I was preparing for this case, basically says the only way you can assume the risk is if you know all about it.
Right.
And even if you don't know all about it, the provider of the product or the provider of the service has made their best faith, based on their superior knowledge, they should know more about than anybody else,
Right.
has done the best they can to try to give you that information. If there's something even they don't know, like we didn't know asbestos was dangerous, but what I did know about my product or service, I told you, then you can assume the risk. How does that apply to an industry that never puts out the dangers of the product when they market it?
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So how can they use the assumption of risk because they haven't met the qualifications for that relief, that legal relief? Now, you talk about children, and I covered this before. When I talked to this advertising exec in New York, I asked him the question, does the liquor industry advertise to young people? And he kind of laughed and he said, well, are you serious? And I said, yeah, because it may come up in court and I'm going to accuse them of influencing young people to drink prior to, And he said, well, first you acknowledge that young people, he says, do you think young people drink more illegally or drive more illegally? And I said, well, drink. Yeah, that's right, because the car manufacturers could never make the promises of social acceptance, excitement, that the liquor industry does. Couldn't do it. That's why it's not there. But the second thing is, he said, in the pie of advertising, there are slices. One slice, for instance, with a car company is, if you're influenced by prestige, I'm going to have a commercial showing you getting in your Lincoln in front of the country club. If you like performance and free spirit, I'm going to have a commercial with the top down, and you're not going to have an automatic Mustang. You're going to be shifting gears as you head down Highway 1 in California. But he said, regardless of the product, if it's a nationally marketed product that is going to be a product that probably used through life, okay? One slice of that pie is called branding. And branding is done aimed at the part of the mind that matures, at the junior high level. That's always there. He said when our company had Ford as an account, part of our job was to see that those kids were thinking Ford instead of Chevrolet by the time they were freshmen. They didn't even drive yet. But you and I remember the arguments about Chevy and Ford.
Yep.
So, again, when I say this is the last great medicine show, this is just a cacophony of misrepresentation and withholding material facts and telling everybody, well, you're on your own. There's no precedent for it anywhere in the American marketplace. It's unbelievable. And when you say, why can't people take them to court? I could take one person if they've got a child who's been harmed, or maybe they've lost a child, and they certainly didn't encourage it. They weren't reckless with the knowledge of alcohol at home, and purely culture and peer pressure and everything is what got to this child. If somebody wanted to take this to court, I'll volunteer right now as an expert witness, and I will tell you, in 3 years of studying just this one topic, I can't get you out of a bad marriage or a rent agreement. I'm not a lawyer. But I'll stack my knowledge up on this topic against anybody in the country. And if somebody wants to take this forward, and Jeffrey Feig or anybody, if you're out there, this is huge. This industry has paid and lobbied for the right to farm the population generation after generation. Even the judge that threw my case out of court with the statement that he said, I learned a long time ago that anyone who attempts to legislate social policy from the bench is either brave or foolish, and I am neither. Okay? When he approached me later and said, I think everybody knows about alcohol. I mean, people have to take responsibility. I said, so you think every person that enters this world has good, usable, realistic knowledge about alcohol entering their system and what I said that first of all, Your Honor, that's news to the medical world, because they're pretty much convinced that when you leave the womb, you don't know much about this world at all, if anything. So there's a piece of medical knowledge. And if you really think people honestly know and believe in the hazards of alcohol and how to use it, well, if you look at the statistics, we got a lot of very self-destructive and suicidal people. The point is they don't take it seriously because the industry's never been compelled to make them take it seriously. Now, I'm not a prohibitionist. I'm not a moralist. I was a guy like you that when I quit drinking, just because I was getting sunburnt doesn't mean everybody's got to get off the beach. I work at the VFW, and my comrades don't have a problem with drinking. I'll buy a round. This is a very specific issue. It's one piece of the pie. We're bringing in, roping in, through misrepresentation and state and federal governments, conspiring to protect this one industry's right to market in a certain way that nobody else can. There is no other law on the books anywhere in the United States that specifically prohibits people from requiring a product or service to warn its customers. There is none other on the books. And you'd think, well, of course there isn't. That's ludicrous. Well, there's a thing called the Beverage Labeling Act at the federal government that the alcoholic beverage industry lobbied for, and it exists.
So what is the future of that? If people want to contact us, and I don't know whether our email address is on the show or not on the thing, but we'll have it up soon. On the next show at least, we'll definitely have that up there. But somehow we need to re-educate or educate, not re-educate, educate the people. And I do a lot of talking with substance abuse users, and I go to jails and talk to the jails about it. But this brings a whole new picture into it, a whole new light into it. And how do we, outside of a class action suit, as we're saying, or we get a politician on our side, and I hope somebody's watching out there who's got some stroke that can meet some of these folks and say, listen, let's revisit this whole alcohol thing. Because I'm sitting here thinking of all the stuff that I did when I was drinking. And I know, like when you're talking about researching, we as adults should have knowledge about our consumption or any product.
Well, even in a real estate deal or rental or an automobile, they have a lemon law.
Yeah.
The courts uphold the premise that if you are misrepresented in any type of transaction to your detriment or harm, you're relieved from that. The exception is the alcoholic beverage industry.
And I don't know where we went wrong on this whole thing.
It has a unique history. It was outlawed once, and the people that, as a force that came against it during Prohibition, were the Christian Women's Temperance Union. So it was taken as a moral issue, which I always kind of thought was a mistake.
Right.
In my years of talking on this subject and going places and things, I've never put, if there's any moral issue at all, it's just that we're lying to our kids. That's a moral issue. There's nothing inherently evil about any inanimate object on the planet as far as I'm concerned, rocks, beer, anything else. But if we have given this industry the permission and the protection to just farm the population generation after generation, who are we as a people? And I don't know if we changed the advertising and the accountability and the responsibility. I don't know what the statistics will change. But as President Obama said, if we can save one or two, it's worth it. But the point is, as they say in law, there's a phrase, Latin phrase called malum in se. It's just wrong in itself. This is just wrong in itself.
Right.
If I grew up knowing full well that it wasn't my lack of maturity, my personality, that type of thing, that when I got goofy, addicted to it was the booze. Alcohol is a substance, like coffee.
Yep.
And you put it in your body, these things can happen. If these things happen to you, you just might not be one of those people that can use it, just like don't eat shellfish if you're allergic to it. That's where we should be in this country. We've elevated this to the point of godliness and rite of passage and maturity. They keep all the money. Remember, and I beat this dead horse until it's swollen and cooking on the side of the road. This is not a religion. It's not free speech. This is a for-profit group of industries.
Right.
They make a product, they bring it to the marketplace, they get to keep the money. There are laws about what happens when you do that, when you bring a product to the marketplace.
Well, we've got an open and standing invitation to anyone who wants to come on this show who may have suffered a loss from a loved one.
Any attorney?
Any attorney wants to
Anybody that
come
wants
on
to
the
start a
show?
case, I offer myself right now as a witness, and I will tell the tale and the things that I experienced in this process. And it's very powerful.
And if you want to tell your story to help promote this along, we have to start doing something. And we've decided that this show predominantly is going to be directed towards education of our consumption of alcohol.
Sure.
And we're going to have other topics on as well, but this will be the primary focus for a while.
Mike, if you go down to the courthouse here and random days, young people who are at Western and that type of thing are asked to come in and they get random breathalyzers and that type of thing just for drinking. We get these young people that we have told this is all fun and rite of passage, and we're killing them thousands and thousands of dollars, altering their whole life.
Right.
In legal terms, when you induce somebody to do something that would be harmful to them had they known better, and then hold them accountable, that's called entrapment.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, if I come up in an unmarked police car and rev the engine and flip you off and call you names and get you to drag race, then I turn on the light and arrest you. Well, what are we doing here?
It's the same
Use
thing.
it, have a good time. Oh, wait, now you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And we're going to, it's a terrible, terrible thing we do to our young people. I get so, when you talk about substance abuse, you've heard me say before, I don't believe in substance abuse.
Right.
When a guy beats his wife, it's called spouse abuse. When you beat your kids, it's child abuse. When you ruin your life with something that you ingest and put, that's self-abuse.
Right.
Maybe a drug, maybe alcohol, whatever, that's self-abuse. So stop abusing yourself,
It's playing on
about
words.
a minute and a half left.
It's
Mike.
playing on words that
Yep.
that people can understand and relate to.
Sure.
We're definitely going to have another show on this, if not 2 or 3.
Yep. I challenge anybody to come in, and I'll more than have an adversarial conversation with them.
And
Love to.
And we need to wake up out there, everybody. And I say that in hindsight because I've been there, and it took me a long time and cost me a lot to wake up. But had we had this conversation, I'm hoping 30, 40 years ago, a lot of us wouldn't be where we ended up being.
Yep. Yep.
We need to promote this, encourage this, have
The-
people come on board.
The bottom line is that no other for-profit industry in the United States has the legal right to operate the way these guys do, and it's got to stop.
Well, this might be the beginning of it.
I hope so.
Start it from here. Please, anybody who's watching, this topic I know is personal to a lot of people, and a lot of people out there have been really affected by it.
Yep.
Suicides, depression, alcohol depression, it all happens. The bottom of the bottle does not have the answer. So let's promote this and get it going.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it to cover this again.
And this is the Dick and Mike Show, and look forward to seeing you again.